Hello, everyone, and thanks for hanging out with us for the Behind the Numbers weekly listen, a eMarketer podcast made possible by VTEX. This is the Friday show that reviews the most, come again, digital news stories of the week. I'm your host, Marcus Johnson. In today's show, how advertising is changing as the pandemic eases.
I think, there's this opportunity to say, we've reimagined what's possible because of the pandemic and because of our, a push towards digital.
Facebook Live shopping events.
So they're bringing brands that people know and like to some degree to get people's attention in the hopes that they'll actually start shopping through live streams. They're betting on big brands doing it. I'm not so sure, but that's their attempt.
Online retail sales decelerate.
It's very natural that growth is going to slow, considering that we basically packed in 4 years of e-commerce sales growth into 1 year in 2020.
Delivery speeds speed up. Snapchat's augmented reality push. And how much time do we have to enjoy life? Join me today for this episode. We have three people. Let's introduce them. We start with our senior analyst covering connectivity and tech. It's Sarah M. Watson.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Sarah. We're also joined by our analyst on the payments and commerce team. It's Daniel Keys.
Hey, Marcus.
Hey, chap. And finally, we have one of our analysts covering retail and e-commerce. It's Blake Drosh.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, chap. So, today's episode, 4 portions as per usual. The starter is our story of the week. We're going to be talking about what's going on as the pandemic eases, how are consumers behaving, how advertisers responding. We then move to the game of the week, the main course, if you will, where we have our guests, Daniel, Blake, and Sarah, who will go head to head to try and give us the best takeaway they can from each of the 4 stories we have for you to win the championship belt. We then move to the dessert, which is questions answered, the part of the show where we answer the questions that you've emailed into us. And finally, we have the cheese board or the coffee portion, which is dinner party data, which is everyone's favorite portion. We talk about nothing that matters, random trivia time. So we start with the starter. Our story of the week is what's going on as the pandemic eases. Francesca Fontana of the Wall Street Journal notes a few signs that things are getting back to normal. Sizable movie theater turnout for the Godzilla vs. Kong film would be one. Baseball's opening day saw 15,000 fans attend an LA Angels Chicago White Sox game at Angels Stadium, opened at 33% capacity. Another indication. Another one would be a 60,000 person conference in Las Vegas scheduled for the start of June. Disneyland California reopened at 15% to 35% capacity, and Delta Airlines said it would be filling middle seats again starting May 1st after blocking them for over a year. A lot of examples, folks, of how the world feels like it's getting back to normal. What are your thoughts? How does it feel like it's getting back to normal for you? Or maybe it doesn't.
I'll jump in. I just got invited to one of those Las Vegas conferences that is half virtual and half in person.
Was it the Concrete Conference? The world of concrete.
No, it was not concrete. It was
very exciting.
It was a digital health care conference. But yeah, it was
okay.
It was a strange moment of, this is a hybrid conference, but it was also in Las Vegas. And I was just, it's in August, and I personally wasn't ready to do that. That's, not quite there yet. And I think that's really getting into this weird, awkward transition period that we are in, where everyone is renegotiating and everyone is kind of exploring what their comfort level is, what their threshold is. And that's going to be an ongoing negotiation. Yeah.
It also seems to be the land of awkward encounters now. You
oh my God,
walk into a shop and is it like, are we doing masks in here? Should I just do what everyone else is doing? Every business is slightly different. Every crowd is slightly different.
Do we go in for the hug or not?
Oh yeah. What's the greeting? I definitely tried. I think I tried to shake someone's hand and they were like, I'm not ready for that. And they batted my hand away. No, that didn't happen. But yeah, what do you do? Do you hug? Do you try and hug people? Do you ask them what they're comfortable with? Do you just wave at them from 2 feet away? Very weird.
See, I think for one, I think that this is really maybe the greatest time, because not only do you only have to engage in what you're comfortable in, but you only have to engage in what you want to engage in. And if you don't want to engage in it, then you just tell them you are still uncomfortable because of the pandemic situation. And that's kind of a golden opportunity to get out of whatever you want that is going to be somewhat fleeting. So I would say just enjoy it while it lasts. And to all the people that I would have felt sociably obligated to hug in, the pre-pandemic times that I could still wave to at a distance, I'm grateful for that opportunity while it lasts.
Enjoy the built-in excuse whilst it's here.
The ultimate excuse.
Blake's like, I'm not hugging
It's a
people.
once in a lifetime opportunity.
Daniel, how about you? I got some other examples here. US hotel occupancy reached nearly 60% during mid-March. That's the highest level since March 2020. Festivals coming back. Bonnaroo scheduled for summer and fall. Olive Garden, their parent company, saw same restaurant sales exceed pre-pandemic levels during the second half of March. Times Square, daily foot traffic is up 15% since September, with over 115,000 people coming through each day. And also consumer confidence back up. YouGov and The Economist's consumer confidence indicator is back to the same level it was when the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic back in March 2020. Daniel, what indicators jump out to you, my friend?
I mean, I think people wanting to go to Times Square is a good signify people are bored and trying to find things to do and are being tourists again. So that's actually a positive sign. For me personally, I bought tickets to a Mets game recently, and bands I like are starting to go on tour. And I'm like, do I want to be inside at a concert venue? And I don't think I'm ready for that quite yet. But I'm thinking the fact that those are questions I'm posing to myself. With hotels, the hotel occupancy going up, like, do I want to travel? For me, it's a lot of like, am I ready for this? But I think a lot of people are maybe a step ahead of me for just kind of re-engaging with having things to do, having events. And those seem like very positive signs for just getting back out there. Mm-hmm. Also, I really enjoy putting music festivals and Olive Garden back to back. Just feels like very, very distinct experiences. But they are both signs of people getting back to normal to some degree.
Give me those breadsticks.
Yeah, returning to normal ways of doing things. A couple of pieces of research here, two different sources. One from Coresight Research. The share of Americans who met with friends and family went from 4 out of 10 to 6 out of 10 from March to mid-May. Those who went to a restaurant, 3 out of 10 to 5 out of 10 over those 10 weeks. Those who went on a trip, from 7% to 15%. So some numbers going up. Civic Science shows that by May 9th, 76% of folks were comfortable working among colleagues or shopping in stores. 65% were happy to eat out. 54% happy to travel. 46% happy to or comfortable going to the movies or to a major public event. More interestingly, each of these activities were up 10 to 20 points since February. So everything seems to be going up. Things going up at different trajectories, obviously, so it's worth keeping an eye on those. There was also some research from GWI I thought was quite interesting. April 2021, what are people delaying because of the pandemic? The highest share of people said nothing. I'm not delaying anything. I'm cracking on with life. The first option selected was large purchases, 25%, then home improvement, 20%, moving, 13%, changing jobs, 11%, and then moving abroad, having children and getting married was in the single digits. So it seems like people aren't really delaying things much anymore.
Home improvement, you have to delay it not because of the pandemic, but because the cost of lumber is so high.
Or is it too expensive?
Yeah.
Very true. So CDC's pandemic guidance has been changing. Lots of states relaxing restrictions. Brands are now having to negotiate. It feels a little bit disingenuous is the right word, but inaccurate to say post-pandemic. It's the best we've got for now. Post-pandemic advertising. That's what they're trying to navigate. Shannon Miller of Adweek writes, quote, while it will take months for even the most vaccine-supplied markets to reopen safely, there's already an intense sense of urgency among advertisers to not be the last brand celebrating these moments of relief and release, close quote. She highlights a euphoric extra gum ad called For When It's Time. It's got an over-the-top delivery, which perfectly addresses our collective eagerness to reconnect. People running, basically looking through the window, realizing that people are out and about again, unsure of whether they can come out of their cocoons, bursting out of their homes, running around the place, screaming, trying to break back into their offices, and then a lot of people kissing a lot of other people who they don't seem to have known previously. Guys, what do you make of how advertisers are handling the moment?
I mean, I think they face a really tough challenge in that you want to have this euphoric moment like it's over, but it's not really, even in the US, it's not technically over. It's still dangerous. People are still dying. So you want to avoid offending anyone and having anything like everything's fun and good, especially when, other countries outside of the US are having trouble. You don't want to be tone deaf or offensive, but you also want to tap into this energy of at least relief and excitement for things to get better. So it's a tough line to toe, but obviously they have to if they want to be able to stay on top of the market. Yeah,
it definitely seems to be, you talked about the death rate. There's still, hundreds of people losing their lives every day. So it's such a tough moment because you do want to be the company that's being hopeful, optimistic. You don't want to cross the line. It seems like, I think the article was noting from Shannon Miller, the sense of kind of cautious optimism, without going overboard. Yeah, you kind of want to reflect a world that we live in and not one that we kind of wish we lived in. That's why I'm kind of hesitant to say post-pandemic. And there was actually a GWI article by Shauna Moran. She had noted a quote from a historian, Niall Ferguson, that argued it's better to imagine a with COVID world than a post-COVID one, as the virus is just another disease we need to acclimatize to as a species. I thought that was quite interesting. Not trying to get past this, but just trying to, kind of live in the moment. Speaking of which, it seems as though people are learning to live with it as well, learning to live with COVID. GWI research shows that people expect the pandemic to still last for at least another 6 months. That number was up 7 out of 10 people from 3 out of 10 a year ago. So a lot more people expecting it to last for a while, but their concern levels were down. The share of folks who were concerned went from 5 out of 10 last year to 4 out of 10. I guess for advertisers as well, it's a lot about just trying to figure out how people are doing kind of old things in new ways. Like with travel, one of the main drivers of travel is people's ability to visit friends and family. And so if you put that into your messaging, then you're going to resonate a lot more with folks than, crazy trips abroad to the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really about addressing people's various risk profiles. I think we have all kind of renegotiated what our risk appetite is. And, that is in process of changing because, with the vaccine, your risk profile is, a lot lower. But the rest of the world is not necessarily part of that same risk profile. Or, even me making a choice to say like, well, I can go maskless, but I don't know about any of the other people around me, what their vaccine status is. And I think there's, that's in the present context, not even to say, what the broader global context is. So I think it's just this, advertisers are going to have to meet consumers where they are, both literally and kind of figuratively in their headspace.
Caitlin Tiffany of The Atlantic questions whether we are about to start a summer of a great offlining in America. She writes that, quote, a few signs that this movement could be upon us. Number one, Netflix reported its worst first quarter in 8 years after seeing historic growth rates in 2020. I think their Q1 numbers 4 million, down from 16 the Q1 before. Number two, Tinder conceded that over half of its Gen Z users have no intention of using its video chat features ever again. Number three, Clubhouse downloads fell significantly. It dropped off a cliff in April, prompting worry that the app was always just a temporary salve of being stuck inside. Guys, is this a sign of things to come, do you think?
I think it's just a sign of the inevitable tapering of different types of media that we've adapted and different types of technology that we've adapted out of necessity throughout the pandemic. And one of the things that we've been, constantly talking about over the past year and a half is what, behavior, what in terms of using technology and media consumption is going to stick, and then what's going to drop off. And now we're just seeing that start to happen. I'm not necessarily sure I agree with all of the examples that were put forth in that article, but this is basically the time where people are going to be cashing in on their bets as to which behavior is going to stick and which behavior was really just sort of a temporary stopgap for the things that we couldn't engage in the last year and a half.
Yeah, I don't think this necessarily signifies like a move to offline that reverts to even, it goes beyond pre-pandemic conditions. It's just that we were really online for the last year and change, and now we don't need to be quite as online. So some of that stuff is stepping back. But I don't think things are going to fall way back where they were already. I think it's just going to be we're just seeing what sticks, like Blake said.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think, there's this opportunity to say, we've reimagined what's possible because of the pandemic and because of our, a push towards digital. And so there was another Qualtrics survey that suggested, these are all the things that people have done for the first time digitally in the pandemic. And I think, maybe the time spent doing these activities might go down, but the fact that you've done these activities like video calling or ordering groceries or, purchasing online, like the threshold has been crossed because you realize that that's possible now. And so, maybe you're not doing it all the time, but it's a new venue for you to do these activities online. And so I think it's really just going to be an adjustment of amounts of time versus like, are you a consumer who shops online, for example?
Right. Yes, Miss Tiffany talks about a great rebalancing, as opposed to maybe she says maybe it's not going to be a great offline, a great rebalancing where we reconfigure how we do our work and how we organize our time on the internet. She says, I'm so tired of looking at this computer, but I also feel a level of comfort about the internet that I didn't have before. The difference is that I've learned what being online can do for me, what it can't. Before the pandemic, my relationship with the internet was defined by compulsion. Now I see the internet as a utility, an essential service, but one I use only for specific purposes. So we've got time for the lead story. We move now to the game of the week. First, a quick word from our sponsor, VTEX. Retail's next competitive threat may come from a business model or channel that didn't even exist a few months ago. This modern dynamic requires companies to adapt quickly, pivoting business seemingly overnight, something traditional commerce platforms just can't support. There's a new enterprise commerce platform on the rise, one that's fast, flexible, and doesn't require 9 months and $1 million to get up and running. Go to vtex.com/emarketer to learn more. All right, folks, we are back. It's time now for the game of the week. Today's game, what's the point? The part of the show where we read out 4 stories and have our contestants, Daniel, Blake, and Sarah, tell us what they think is the main takeaway of the story. Okay answers get 1 point, good answers get 2, and checkmate answers will win you the game. Each person gets 20 seconds before they hear this. Whoever has the most points after 4 rounds wins. You also get that and gets the last word. Let's move to our first story. We'll start with Daniel. Facebook live shopping events. At the end of May, Facebook held a series of weekly events to help get brands and customers more familiar with its online shopping live streaming feature. Facebook debuted its live shopping feature back in November 2020 by working with retailer Anne Klein for the launch. But as insider intelligence analyst Nina Getson points out, just 38% of US adults said they've watched a live stream of someone talking about a product, and of that group, just 7% said they ultimately made a purchase, notes an April survey by the Harris Poll. Daniel, Facebook live shopping events, what's the point?
This is Facebook trying to bring in the big guns to get live stream shopping off the ground in the US, because they're partnering with Sephora and Abercrombie and Fitch for this, so they're bringing like brands that people know and like to some degree to get people's attention in the hopes that they'll actually start shopping through live streams. It's really popular in China. It hasn't really taken off here. They're betting on big brands doing it. I'm not so sure, but that's their attempt.
Sarah.
I just feel everything old is new again. QVC is just finding its new audience. But, for this to take off, as Daniel said, this is a Chinese trend and it's huge in China, but it's going to take, a better uptake for it to take off in the US.
Blake.
Yeah, a lot of US retailers and tech companies are investing in live streaming. So it's not just social networks, but Amazon's got a growing platform. Even like traditional retailers like Nordstrom have launched live streaming. So this is a way for Facebook to court brands and try to situate themselves as sort of the, key platform for live shopping by creating some big partnerships with really reputable brands.
US social commerce sales will account for just under 4% of all online sales this year, 36 billion according to our forecasting team. Next year, 44 billion, up 22%. Our second story is for Sarah to start with. Online retail sales decelerate. America's economy is expected to witness a strong bounce back, with some economists expecting to see growth of 6% this year, 4 points faster than pre-pandemic numbers. However, after the pandemic boom, online retail sales are slowing, notes an article in The Economist. They point out that Target, Walmart, and Home Depot all recorded much slower rates of online sales growth in Q1, going from the triple-digit range to strong double digits. Is that more so because people are hesitant to loosen the purse strings, or because consumers' appetite for brick and mortar remains strong? A recent YouGov survey found that the top reasons people shop in brick and mortar include physically experiencing products, 62%, the ability to try things in store, 53%, and the speed of purchase, 45%. Sarah, online retail sales decelerating. What's the point?
Yeah, to me, it's really about a rebalancing of what things you want to buy online and what things you have been waiting to buy in store because you want to experience them in person. And I also just think, people are just going to be shifting in what they need right now. Like, I'm not buying sweatpants anymore. What am I buying? I'm buying shoes that I haven't worn in months. So what does that mix of product look like?
Blake.
Yeah, and it's very natural that growth is going to slow, considering that we basically packed in like 4 years of e-commerce sales growth into 1 year in 2020. So the fact that it's building upon has to build upon a much larger base of existing e-commerce sales, and the fact that we went through this sort of like time machine of sales growth last year makes perfect sense that things are going to balance out a little bit.
Daniel.
Yeah, I think it's also notable that e-commerce is still growing at a pretty fast clip, not compared to last year, but still overall. Because that points to e-commerce continue to get bigger and bigger, despite things improving. So it really sets e-commerce up to, skip a few years, like Blake said, and really continue to grow its presence and eat into in-store shopping share. And it's just not really showing signs of actually stopping. It might slow down a little bit, but that's not necessarily a bad thing when you consider the context.
Story 3, delivery speeds speed up. Bed Bath & Beyond is the latest retailer to team up with DoorDash to offer online shoppers a same-day delivery option, writes Lisa Lacey of Adweek. CVS, Bloomingdale's and others are tapping into the company's white label fulfillment platform, DoorDash Drive, to offer faster shipping times without having to hire more people or buy more fulfillment centers, notes Insider Intelligence analyst Mariel Soto-Reyes. Yeah, my question was, can faster delivery speeds help retailers compete with Amazon? But take it whatever direction you want, folks. Blake, we'll start with you. Delivery speed speeding up. What's the point?
Yeah, so for retailers, absolutely. It's a way to compete with other retailers that are offering faster shipping like Amazon. For delivery platforms, it's also a good idea because if you have a company like DoorDash and you're a DoorDash customer, you maybe order takeout for them, once a week or so. But if you're buying everyday essentials, that gives you an incentive to maybe subscribe to their premium platform where you get the free shipping, and you're also going to order more frequently from different places that offer everyday products, grocery products, just things that are purchased more frequently. So a good way for these delivery companies to also up their frequency of sales.
Daniel.
For retailers, it's a good way to compete with the Amazon. So there are generally more fees attached than there would be to an Amazon with Prime Now order. And speaking of, there's kind of an overall happening in the on-demand delivery space where Amazon just folded Prime Now into its regular marketplace. There's no longer a separate app. Instacart, DoorDash, Uber are all getting into delivering more and more products, not just groceries, not just food. And the retailers are interested, which is good for them. But it's an increasingly competitive space to deliver things within 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours. And that's something that's going to keep getting more competitive and should continue to be appetite for it from consumers in the years to come.
Sarah.
Yeah, my focus is on the logistic partners, the importance of these logistics partners in these retailers. If you're going to compete with Amazon, you have to match a very complex logistics problem. And so it's no wonder that, a company like Uber doesn't consider itself a ride-sharing company. It's considering itself a logistics company. And I think that will be really important for these relationships.
Speaking of companies which consider themselves things which we don't necessarily associate themselves with, Snapchat, the camera company. Snapchat's augmented reality push is our fourth story. And our final round, Snapchat has a few augmented reality announcements as of late. Number one, a pair of fourth generation AR glasses that look a bit like the black version of the old school blue and red movie theater glasses. If you remember those, they come with 2 cameras, 4 microphones, and stereo speakers, and weigh 134 grams. That's double the weight of the version 3 pair of glasses. The wearer can control them using their voice or a touchpad on the side. Instead of selling them, Snap is giving them directly to an undisclosed number of AR effects creators through an application program online. The battery does only last for 30 minutes. The second announcement in the AR space was a new feature called Connected Lenses that lets multiple people see and interact with the same scene in AR on their own devices. So folks could build a Lego model together in AR if they wanted to on their devices from different places. And number 3, a feature called Screenshot, which will recommend clothing items when you scan an outfit. Let's start with Daniel. Snapchat's AR reality push. What's the point?
I think the AR technology has some potential for sales, for marketing, to appeal. I do wonder if the glasses, if that's going to happen. Google Glass was kind of derided in the past. The spectacles didn't take off the first time. It seems like they're taking a more measured approach this time, where they're not pushing them to all consumers right away, which could help them get better and gain appeal over time. That's probably a smart move. I think that in years from now, AR will have a lot of maybe daily functionality, but I'm not sure we'll ever get to a point where a lot of people are walking around with the glasses on all the time to use all the AR capabilities.
Sarah.
Yeah, so Snap, Apple, Facebook are all betting on the fact that the next computing interface is not your phone, but your face. And so, I think there's something interesting going on here, but I actually think they're almost missing this opportunity. We just talked about the great offlining. This would have been the moment to, have a new opportunity to help us navigate the world and, use maps on our augmented reality interface if we're all sick of looking at our phones and looking at our devices. So missed opportunity that these are not available for purchase for consumers yet.
Blake.
Yeah, I think that, augmented reality through glasses has a really strong use case in the home. But in terms of something that's going to be like wearable in everyday life, I think we're still a very, very long way away from that. Even if the technology catches up and becomes much more advanced and much more user-friendly than we've seen over the last couple of years, the way that I think we're still very, very far away from, for a world where it's going to be commonplace to see people walking around with augmented reality.
2 quick points here. In their largest deal ever, Snap is buying Wave Optics for $500 million. That's the company that supplied the AR displays that power its new spectacles, glasses, notes The Verge. And the second point here, Nina Getson, who I mentioned earlier, one of our analysts here at Insider Intelligence, said that when Snap launched the first version of its AR spectacles back in 2016, believe it or not, less than 8% of US social media users were using AR. Less than 8%. This year, we expect 23% of US social media users to use AR. That is it for the game of the week. This week's winner, Daniel, is this week's winner of the game of the week. Congratulations to Daniel. He wins this week's championship belt. Daniel, and the last word as well. Daniel, congratulations. What do you want to tell us?
A true honor. Thank you very much for the award.
It's not, but thank you for saying that.
Now that it's June, I'm just going to suggest that everyone, if you can, go to the beach, go to a lake. It's safe COVID-wise, and also it's just, I think, a really good thing to do, A, when it's warm out, and B, when it's, when you just need kind of to give your mind a break. As a big beach advocate in my personal life, I can recommend it highly.
I can second that. I was at one on the weekend, and it was a great shout. All right, folks, that's it for the game of the week. It's time now for questions answered. We have a question this week from Jake from Michigan. He has a question about the word oligopoly. So he gets a word of the day notification from dictionary.com's app. A recent word of the day was oligopoly, whose definition is the market condition that exists when there are few sellers, as a result of which they can greatly influence price and other market factors. His question is, in the context of marketing, what, if any, oligopolies do you see operating these days? So yeah, Jake, since obviously the 1980s, it's become more common for industries to be dominated by 2 or 3 companies for a lot of reasons. One big reason is that mergers between major players have resulted in industry consolidation. If you look at the US, you have a handful of oligopolies that quickly stand out. In the media world, you have Warner Media, Comcast, Netflix, and Disney. In terms of wireless carriers, you have Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T. In terms of music labels, Sony BMG, Universal Music Group, and Warner Music Group. Domestic airlines, you've got American, Delta, Southwest, and United. Those 4 flew about 80% of domestic passengers in 2017. So there are a couple of oligopolies that exist in the US. In terms of oligopolies that exist in the context of marketing, I spoke to Nicole Perrin earlier, and she had this to say.
That's a great question. Oligopoly is a nice word. We don't typically use it. We typically talk a little bit more specifically about the duopoly of Facebook and Google, or the triopoly that includes Amazon. But certainly the digital ad market in the US is dominated by a relatively small number of very large players. And I think one could reasonably consider it an oligopoly, at least in some respects. I think there are some other ways in which the concept touches on digital marketing, though. One example is there's essentially just 2 relevant mobile OS makers, right? There's Android and there is iOS. So there's sort of an oligopoly in terms of the choices consumers have about the OS on their smartphone. And of course, with iOS 14.5 and more recently, Google announcing a better opt-out mechanism for the mobile ad ID, I think, we'll continue to see that particular market dominated by just two sellers also have some very important, far-reaching effects in the lives of marketers going forward.
So yeah, thank you, Nicole, so much for that response. As Nicole mentioned, you've got the big three digital ad giants, Google, Facebook, and Amazon. You've also got social media, a handful of companies, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and LinkedIn. Facebook obviously owning WhatsApp and Instagram as well. So those four dominating social media. In the digital video world, you've got Netflix, Disney, and Amazon Video. Disney owning Disney Plus and Hulu. Digital audio, you have Spotify, Apple, Pandora. Even out-of-home advertising, you've got Clear Channel, Lamar, and Outfront Media. So yeah, a number of different spaces where you have 3 to 4 companies that have a significant amount of influence on that market. So yeah, thank you so much for your question. Thank you to Nicole for answering it. If you have any questions of your own, or just want to say hi, podcast@emarketer.com is where you can find us. It's time now for dinner party data. This is the part of the show where we tell you about the most interesting thing we've learned this week. We start with Daniel because he won this week's Game of the Week. Daniel, what have you learned recently?
So I had the beach on my mind lately as we hit Memorial Day. It's June, and I was looking at the history of the beach a little bit. Obviously, they've been around for a very long time, but it turns out people haven't viewed them as like places to go for fun until the mid 18th century. They were more associated with like fear and concerns, Noah's Ark, the world flooding, krakens, other mythologies, etc. People didn't start, at least in Europe, people didn't start going to the beach for fun or as like a relaxing opportunity until kind of recently. Because I haven't thought about it that much. But, I'm a big fan of the beach, and if I lived in like the 400s, and I was by a beach, I would have wanted to go to the beach. But apparently, everyone was very scared of that, which I find interesting. That this area that we all view very positively now, for the most part, were legitimately scared of for a very long time.
That's a good point. So I'm reading a historical fiction, and there's a scene where like Saxons are coming in off the beach. I think it's like Saxons or Vikings are coming in like off the coast, and they're like heading towards the beach, and people are just like, there's this blind panic. So yeah, you probably would have pretty strong fear association with the beach. It's where people attack you.
Yeah, the exact opposite of how you think about it now.
Yeah. Well, some beaches that still happens.
That's true.
Or more so seagulls. So aggressive, man.
It's a permanent
I saw
risk.
it snatched a sandwich out of a kid's hand once, and I'm forever terrified.
They'll just rip open a bag of chips, even if they're not even open yet.
No respect.
Wild.
Seagulls, no respect. Straight into the Doritos. You can't blame them. Daniel, thank you for that, sir. Let's go with Sarah. What you got?
So this comes from Morning Consult. It's about Saturday Night Live. So the show's current cast is viewed favorably by only 34% of US adults, and that is lower than all previous casts, including the original cast, which is people have a real nostalgia for the original cast. They had a 70% favorability rating. And so I find this interesting because SNL obviously has had a weird up and down kind of period with, Trump being gone and President Joe Biden entering office. Apparently before Biden took office, their average viewership was at 7.1 million, but that dropped to 5.8 million after the inauguration. It actually jumped back up again to 7.3 million when Elon Musk was the stunt host, as it were. So yeah, but I find this to be really sad because I'm actually a huge fan of the current cast. And it's a real shame because, Kate McKinnon, Adie Bryant, and Bowen Yang, I consider comedic treasures. They're really worth watching. So
I thought you were going to say Friends then. I thought you were going to be like, I consider them friends.
I wish I could. Yeah.
So questions 1, how long has SNL been going on for?
Since the 70s. So
okay.
Yeah.
And 2, when did it peak? When was the peak popularity? Was it that original cast? Is that the highest, the 70%?
Well, it's hard to say because this is a current view of past.
Okay.
But basically, it goes down from the original cast. And 70% was the original cast. The Eddie Murphy cast had 69% favorability. Molly Shannon and Will Ferrell, 90s, had 59% favorability. So it just goes down from there. It's all downhill.
Interesting. Thanks, Sarah. Positive note. Blake, what you got for us?
I really like the current SNL cast also, and I wonder if it was probably just not only the fact that Trump was out of office, but also that they weren't doing full capacity shows for a while. Maybe some people lost interest. I know that happened with some sports, but It's good. Maybe it's good that Elon Musk brought the ratings back. It's just controversy is good with the show, I think.
Yep.
So this is from YouGov, and I felt like it fit in well to the conversation that we were having at the top of the episode. So it's some data that was published just last week talking about streaming platforms. So they asked how many paid video streaming services, if any, do you currently subscribe to? The most popular answer was two. So 22% of U.S. consumers subscribe to 2 streaming platforms, and that's followed by 20% who said 3 streaming platforms, which is the most popular answer. And in terms of giving up certain media habits, more than half of Americans said that they do not intend to cancel their current video streaming subscriptions, compared to, so 53% said they had no plans, and only 14% said that they have plans to ditch one of the current video platforms that they subscribe to. So I would say that's kind of good news for all of the several hundred streaming platforms that are now available in this country, that most people are, seem to be satisfied and they haven't reached that subscription fatigue, at least with video yet.
What was the height? Was there like a 5+ percentage? Like how many people have over 5 or?
That's a good question. Yeah. So 7% subscribe to more than 5.
Wow.
Okay.
Which is
sounds like a cable package to me.
It's like, yeah, that's a lot of platforms.
Yeah. Huh. Very good. All right, I've got 2 quick ones for you. Kentucky has more bourbon than people. If bourbon is your drink of choice, then you might want to plan a road trip to Kentucky. The state is not only responsible for 95% of the world's bourbon, according to The Atlantic, but there is also so much of it that 4.7 million barrels in the state's distilleries outnumber the 4.3 million people living in the area.
I would imagine that 100% of the world's bourbon comes from Kentucky, considering that it has to be made in Bourbon County, Kentucky, in order to be technically bourbon.
Oh, the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Oh, is it a champagne situation?
Yes, it is.
Is it a champagne situation?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Is there a
situation?
GOC situation?
Yeah.
That sounds like a podcast. Welcome to the champagne situation. The Atlantic, 95. But we'll check that. I probably won't. I'm just going to assume it's 95%. So yeah, I just drove through Kentucky last week, and it's true. I saw no people, just barrels of bourbon dotted around everywhere. Second thing I've got for you, how much time do we spend commuting? In the US, the average worker spends 52 minutes a day commuting to and from work. In many parts of the country, it can be higher, obviously, or lower perhaps. Over the course of just a week, that's 4.5 hours a week spent commuting. If you add up all the hours over the course of a lifetime, the average American loses 408 days of their life commuting. And it's according to educatedDriver.org. A few other numbers on how we spend our time. We spend in our lifetime, we spend 235 days of our lives waiting in queues. That's depressing. If you're British, that's way higher. We spend 12 times longer working than socializing. 12 times longer working than socializing. Blake doesn't. 16% of our...
Right, calling
16%. 16% of our life...
That. You gotta delete that. I don't want that. Yeah,
we'll definitely
look
keep
bad
that
in front of the whole company.
Aren't we socializing now?
My managers listen to this. Yeah.
It's 100% true. 16% of our life we spend at work. We spend 6 times longer watching TV and 2 times longer on social media than we do exercising. We spend 11 years of our life in front of a screen. That's 14% of our life. We spend 26 years of our lives sleeping. That'll be 36% of our life. 7 years of our lives trying to go to sleep. That means we have 7 years left. If you get rid of sleep, work, screen time, eating, holidays, romance, socializing, exercise, and school, we have 7 years left to do things like see shows, run races, tell stories, have families, etc. It's crazy. Just 7 years of me time. That's probably too much.
I'm afraid to know how much of my pandemic time was spent drinking bourbon, because that was my drink of choice.
Oh. Sarah, keeping Kentucky afloat.
Mm-hmm.
You're not alone in that, Sarah.
It did make me think, though, if I was saying this to a mate the other day, if you didn't have to worry about money or healthcare if healthcare was free, how many people would be doing the job they currently do, living in the place they currently live?
Not many.
Zero people. Victoria's face is 0 people. Nobody. What are we doing with our lives?
Making fun podcasts.
Exactly. Listening to shows. Thank you guys so much for listening to this one, even though sometimes it gets a little heavy. Thank you so much to all of my guests for joining me today. Thank you to Daniel.
Thanks for having me.
Who won the game of the week. Thank you to Blake.
Thank you.
Thank you to Sarah.
Thanks for having me, Marcus.
Of course, thank you to Victoria. She edits the show. Thank you to everyone listening. If you ever want to ask us a question yourself or just say hi, you can email us at podcast@emarketer.com. We'll see you guys on Monday for the Behind the Numbers Daily and eMarketer podcast made possible by VTEX. Enjoy those weekends. Or don't. It's up to you. Bell's broken. Bing! Oh, it's proper broken.
My condolences.
Why even play? Why, if the bell doesn't work, why even bother?
I'm only here for the bell.
Mark's going to be furious.
It's a Pavlov situation.
I mean, many people say the Bell's the real host of the podcast, so I agree.
Who says that? Who is saying that?
Many people.
Oh.
Many people. We ran a survey.
When did you run this survey without...
We also had a forecast on it. We've really put a lot of resources into this.
Numbers are way up. Oh, this is a nightmare.
If only we were, tech savvy enough to insert some sort of digital sound effect instead of using an analog bell
Next to a microphone.
next
This is
to a
not my-
microphone.
Mark
that
wanted-
doesn't even register when we're recording
there
the
you go.
podcast.
Here we go.
Move to digital.
It's time, Marcus.
Mark will be furious. Here we go. We're back. Sorry about that. It's a smooth operation here at Behind the Numbers.